So just as a little thought experiment, I think we can imagine that there are actually people in this world who have far less than we have, but feel that their lives are full and abundant, joyful and satisfactory and all that. You can just take a quick look at other countries around the world and see the very, very common living standards and go, yes, there must be extremely happy people in there, just banking on the variety of humanity and types of people that there are around. We can flip this too. Can you imagine that there are people who have far more than you ever dreamed that you would have, but feel trapped, scared, overwhelmed, completely miserable, hopeless? Yes, that exists too. And that's the harder one to do on this thought experiment. The people who have what we would consider to be real wealth, real security, the ability to go anywhere and do anything at any time. And we can't imagine how, having those resources, you would feel completely trapped. But there are plenty of people who are like that. And then other than just those two basics, there are people who have had virtually everything taken from them, who actually had things, and then had it all taken and were imprisoned and persecuted and silenced. Some of them come back and say things and behave in ways that make it seem like even despite everything that we would call happening to them a misfortune, they seem freer than pretty much anyone we ever met. So how does that work? We tend to define freedom in external terms. Freedom of movement, I can go where I want. Financial freedom, I can buy what I want. I always have what I need. I always have food, clothing, and shelter, and I'm portable enough to have those anywhere I want to go. Freedom from other people's control over your time, your choices, your life. Like, I'm not beholden to doing chores for you for a paycheck, you know. I've got enough. Like, we define that, those three things kind of define freedom for most people. This is kind of what we're aiming for. And they are important. They matter. I'm not dismissing them at all. The pursuit of financial freedom is kind of the most common because it's the one most people can relate to. The promise being very straightforward. Accumulate enough and you're free. And I think you can see the kind of twisted logic in that. What tends to happen instead is that accumulation generates its own anxiety. You have more to protect, you have more to lose, you have more to maintain. That's the stuff we don't think about, maintaining all this crap. The person who owns 5 houses isn't less worried than the person who owns 1. They're considerably more worried just about different things. The finish line keeps moving, not because of bad luck or bad planning, but because the finish line was never really there to begin with. Let's take that and scale it up to its most extreme version, or scale it down to its most extreme version, however you want to look at it, and look at someone like Socrates, who was sentenced to death. He had friends who arranged his escape, and he refused. He stayed, he made his argument, he drank the hemlock, and so by every external measure, he had no freedom whatsoever. But the case he made at his own trial was that his accusers are the ones in chains. They are slave to the crowd's opinions, to fear, to the need for everyone around them to agree with their version of reality. He didn't see himself as being brave. He didn't need their approval to feel free. His freedom wasn't located anywhere that anyone else could reach it. Then there's a more obscure figure, but one of my favorite, that's Diogenes. He makes this point very absurdly well. In ancient Greece, he lived in a large ceramic jar. In Athens, he owned nothing, and he was part of the Cynic philosophy, which meant back then that you gave up all your possessions, and you lived in an urban area, you didn't go out to nature, but then you kind of demonstrated to people that the means of a joyful life are really quite simple, widely available, completely free. So there's a story about him, about Alexander the Great coming to visit him, because when Alexander the Great, this would have been before he was Alexander the Great, he was just a king, but he still would have been around 20 or so, and he just came from conquering all these lands, and all these great people came to see him. Diogenes was known as a famous philosopher at the time, but Diogenes did not come. His absence there was noticeable. So Alexander, with some people, said, "Take me to see this guy," and they found him in his jar, and Alexander the Great stood right over him, this big looming figure, and said, basically introduced himself as like, "I could give you anything. Why didn't you come? What do you want? I have everything. What do you need?" And Diogenes just tells him to stand aside because you're standing in my sun. Alexander the Great, instead of ordering Diogenes to be put to death in public, is just kind of taken aback and just goes like, okay. He just kind of follows orders and leaves. So the Diogenes-Alexander story illustrates that the only thing, and this is a common phrase, that the only thing greater than conquering the world is conquering the urge to conquer the world. So what Socrates and Diogenes had in common is that their definition of freedom required zero compliance from the external world. It's not something that could be granted or revoked. It's entirely internal, and that is what makes it unassailable. So most of us aren't facing an imminent death sentence, aside from the one that we don't know is coming, or we're not choosing to give up all our possessions and live in a jar, but this is useful despite all that as well. So let's bring it down to earth. So it's an internal shift that doesn't require you to give up everything you are just to have more freedom in your life. What it requires is a different relationship with all of those things in your life, specifically the anxiety that becomes attached to everything around you. We're steered from very early on toward the idea that the next thing will be the thing that finally settles the restlessness, the new job, the new purchase, the next milestone, getting married, or like I have a kid, and we know having kids doesn't really lower your stress, but it's very much a status thing as well. We need something to work for and goals, and we need something to fix, something to be wrong, so to speak. You can look at it in a different way. Like we like variety, and the culture we live at is extremely good at pointing that sort of wiring towards consumption rather than actual progress or self-improvement or community improvement. But if you catch yourself in that moment, the moment where you're defining yourself by what you're lacking, then you've located the actual problem. It's not the thing you don't have yet. It's this hole inside yourself. During one of my bookstore shifts, I approached a customer who was just kind of standing around, staring off into no man's land, and I said, "Hey, can I help you find something?" And he looked down at me and sighed and said, "Peace of mind." Or he said, "I'm looking for peace of mind." And immediately a whole response assembled itself in my head that I didn't say. And it would have been along the lines of peace of mind is something that only you can give yourself. It's not anywhere else. Your mind is in here. Peace of mind is not going to be at the top of a mountain or the bottom of the ocean or in gunked up inside your lawnmower's sputtering engine. It's right here. This is the thing that's troubling you. To pacify it is not going to be way out there or anywhere else. Anyone who sort of starts meditating is going to understand this, but if you are seeking external silence for internal noise, that's only going to amplify your internal noise. You have to really, really decide to be peaceful, tranquil, centered, and that type of internal action is not something we're very well trained on, because we are so trained to believe that all of our emotions, all of our feelings, all of our opinions are just the result of exterior circumstances, and so we give those exterior circumstances all the power when in fact they have none. I didn't say any of that to him, obviously. I just kind of smiled and laughed and moved on, said, that was probably the right professional thing to do. I sort of wish I'd said that first part. But, when we kind of think we have something wise to say to someone directly in the midst, we sort of forget that people do not like having their version of reality messed with, even if it's a bad version that they're miserable about. The actual takeaway here isn't that you stop wanting things. Forcing yourself to stop wanting things is its own kind of trap. It's this sneaky, this is why like a lot of the minimalism failed and it was this big cultural moment. It's really just this sneaky kind of accumulation. You're still looking to gain by renouncing things, and that's not really renunciation if you're just kind of giving things up in order to get something better. That's just another sneaky form of accumulation. The freedom you're looking for is not at the end of anything. It's not a destination you arrive at after enough struggle or enough accumulation or enough self-improvement. That's your pride procrastinating, saying like, I'm not going to deserve this thing until I really suffer for it because I want other people to see me suffering for it and go, wow, what an amazing guy he is. You're always going to put off freedom forever if that's how you feel about it. The freedom you want is available right now in exactly the circumstances you're currently in, because freedom is an internal state, not an external condition. The moment you stop defining yourself by what you're still seeking, the thing you're seeking kind of feels a little less urgent. You'll feel this psychological push against that, because that's kind of the sunk cost. You're like, I put so much effort into wanting this thing, can I just not want it anymore? Yes, you can. And it's not resignation. It's the first step of a life actually lived, rather than a life held in reserve pending the right conditions. The right conditions are never coming. You are in them right now.